basically how I got into soccer, it was something that I've just loved my entire life. My father actually played for one of the teams in Guatemala back when he was younger. So I think we're going to say, just based on, DNA, it was part of a destiny that I was born to have. So just basics with that. And then beyond that, basically it was in my DNA to keep playing based on my father. He didn't have too much influence on the choices that I made to continue playing, but it was something that I just had a big passion for.
Right.
And I think it's one of those motives for myself is I want to be one of those players that exudes passion when they play and therefore inspires passion, especially for the younger kids. How I got into the national team, definitely took a lot of help from my current club team in the US, which is United City FC. And they basically got in touch with the pro team that my father actually played for, which at the time I didn't know he did. It just was like a fluke that I showed up and was training with this pro club, and they had a scrimmage against the national team set up. And that was kind of like my opportunity to show them who I was, this, American girl that just wanted to come play. So they gave me an opportunity. They said, all right, come out to this scrimmage, train with this team, and we'll see. And from there, I went, played the game, did well, scored a PK. We lost, unfortunately, against the national team, but yeah, it's rightfully so. They're a national team.
Yeah.
And from there, they invited me to camp, and then they've kept me on ever since. So blessed and fortunate that I've had that opportunity to stay with them.
That's very impressive. I mean, moving from just going to, one single game and then ending up with the national team. It's an incredible journey. And I know a lot of these players out here are always looking for stories like that to be inspired, because a lot of kids give up, they don't want to play anymore. They feel like they're never going to make it. So learning that it just takes maybe one moment. You get seen one time and then you never know. You're in the national team.
Yeah.
Or you're playing for, one of your dream team,
Yeah.
You wear jersey number 4 for your national team. Is there a story behind it, or is it just more like, this is my favorite number? It's like...
I want to say it's the number I started wearing after college. So unfortunately, I was not able to play in college. I did other sports, but everyone's journey is so individualized and our paths are different. And like you just mentioned, sometimes doors close. And I unfortunately was one of those players that, it was a constant battle to get seen and to feel seen. So when I moved to Southern California for my design job, I started kind of like a new life. So as some people know, maybe a lot don't, I actually am an identical twin. So yeah, crazy.
Oh, like that, your sister?
Yeah, unfortunately she's not here. She's still in Fresno. But so when I moved here, that's when I started wearing the jersey number 4. It was like a fluke. Like I always wore the number 12. So my sister's name is Jennifer. So she was like Jen 10 and Michelle 12. So they kind of had a rhyming thing going. So it made it easier for people on the field to remember, minus like our cleats, because on a field, twins, we looked exactly the same. So it's very difficult. So kind of the number 4 was like my first step as like an individual, like being recognized as like, okay, this is Michelle. And like, you're shocked as well. It's like, she's a twin.
I know, I did.
Yeah. So that kind of for me is like a symbolism of like stepping into my own as a person and as like an athlete. So that's kind of why I keep the number 4. And if I don't get to wear it, it's not the end of the world, but that kind of for me is like the symbolic meaning of like, this is my journey that I'm going on. So.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. And I like the Gen 10.
Yeah.
The rhyme,
Yeah.
Last time we interviewed, we were at the Galaxy Stadium. You guys had just played. And you're also recovering from an injury. So being called back from an injury, what did that mean to you? And what does it say about you as a player?
Yeah, I think major injuries can be difficult. Not just physically, obviously, because it could be a surgery, broken bone, or whatever it might be. But I think a lot of people forget like the mental aspect of that because it's difficult because I feel like it is a persona of you to play sports, right? Like we're soccer players. And when that gets taken away from us, it's like an identity crisis. It's like, what am I going to do? And from there, I think there is a lot of issues being able to be confident enough to get back onto the field and perform how you perform, and with surgeries, half of them get back to playing and the other half can perform at the same level of expectation that they were before. So I think you have constant statistics put against you. And that's something that is just where, perseverance and will is kind of what drives you. I mean, I was determined to not, give up on that passion and that dream that I had. It's failure is imminent. It's forever. Like, it's going to happen in everyone's career at any point in time. And those failures are what, if you don't have those failures, we don't grow. They strengthen us. They give us will and desire, and they really weed out like how bad you actually want something. And if you're willing to go through all these difficult trials and tribulations and still come out on top of that, I think like you can accomplish anything. And that's in all aspects of life. It's not just playing sports. It's, in a career that is for, a job, like in my design field. If you just let yourself be passed up, then obviously you're going to miss opportunities. It takes being uncomfortable to excel, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's being comfortable in uncomfortability.
Yeah, I mean, you got to test the balance of both sides. Sometimes you're comfortable, sometimes you're uncomfortable.
Exactly.
In order to achieve all that. You talked about interior designing, which is such a creative field. How do you balance both professions, given that both of them are kind of creative in their own way?
Yeah, I think they kind of almost go hand in hand. I think sports have a huge element of creativity and thinking on your toes and dynamically, and it's constantly evolving. So as a designer working on projects, it's constantly evolving.
Right.
Things aren't always A plus B gets C. Things deviate and things get delayed and turn, and it's trying to come up with these cool designs and creating amazing spaces for these people to enjoy and live while living with the dynamics of the flaws of the world. Things get back ordered, things are moving, sometimes the truck breaks down. It's the same thing in sports.
Right.
Like I mentioned, failure is going to happen and we're imperfect, but it's like adapting to those imperfections. So you can apply what you learn in sports to the careers in your life. It's being able to think on the fly. And as far as being creative, it's like, how can you make something that is different and unique, but still, functional? So I think it's like a cool dynamic between both, and they all play into each other.
Correct. Yeah, it's a nice blend of both worlds.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously they both have a lot of creativity, and being an interior designer, I'm sure you walk in locker rooms and you're like, this needs to be updated.
Yeah, I think that's anywhere I go. Like I work for an outdoor design company right now, so a landscape design company, and I get to do all the furniture, pottery, accessories, and styling. So when I go into any building, I'm like, oh, that chair is from this place and this place, and like, oh, could you imagine like that? One chair in this hotel is actually worth like $4,000. And people are like, how do you know this? And you're like, I'm just a nerd for this. And I just know.
I can't help it.
Yeah, I can't help it. So yeah, I definitely do get that aspect when you see like different colorways and styles. And, there's rhymes and reasons for why, certain colors catch people's attentions and why, even breaking onto the field, keepers wear bright colors because they're distracting. It's like stuff that's so elementary that people are just like, oh, that's a cool keeper kit, and it's like, well, it's made that way to distract the shooter or attackers to kick it right at them. So yeah, I definitely get that in any type of building that I'm in, or even on the field, or watching like uniforms and kits, and I definitely have a extra attention to detail to those things.
You're definitely gonna have something to say about our jersey now.
Yeah. I'm sure it's great.
I can't wait to hear more about it. As a defender, obviously, I mean, you have to face a lot of challenges. What is one of the biggest challenges you faced in the field, and what is your mindset when you're like, leading the back line?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges and mindsets that we have to face as defenders is it's the ability to anticipate instead of react. I think that's a big thing that separates, the good from the greats. Not saying that I'm great, and it's something that I'm constantly working on as well, even as a professional. But it is an aspect of the game that you constantly have to challenge and grow, because, I might face a forward who isn't as fast, so I will play a certain type of way. And if I'm playing a girl against a girl that has a lot of pace, it's like you need to respect the space, but not give them too much as to push the ball past you. So it's, like I mentioned before, it's the constant adaptation and being able to anticipate. I think that's a big thing in the sport as a defender that you need to be prepared and aware of, as well as, any position. Like anticipation is a big part of the game. And I think that's the difference of like the reaction time of trying to win a 50-50 ball or when to slide or when to make a tackle or, learning that particular person's playing style and forcing them to their left foot because they're righty or forcing them to their right because they're lefties. It's understanding and adjusting the game based on the type of player you're faced up against.
But you played in the United City FC. How is playing with them help you growth into soccer and into the national? Acclimate yourself to the national team.
Yeah, I think my growth and development with United City FC has been implemental in my journey to the national team. I think maybe not so much on the field, but they've helped me off the field a lot. Like I said, giving me these opportunities to play on the national team and be seen, and they've helped me now go on trials with teams overseas. I think that is an area that I think for women, we don't get a lot of exposure, and it's growing, right? Like now there's $1 million investments going to sports, and, Naomi Girma is on a huge, like, potential loan transfer to Chelsea, as they're mentioning. So I think the sport is growing, and I think I'm a player that's a little bit older, and I just lacked that representation. I lacked having somebody that believed in me as much as I believed in me. And I think that's what United City has given me, is that, like, you are good enough, you can play at the next level, and we're going to help you get there. So they saw that I had the tools to get there, and now they were just helping me pave the way to get there. Like, it's like having, like I mentioned, all the tools to be a plumber, but no one shows you how to change the pipes. You're like, what am I doing with these? I don't know. Yeah. So, and granted, we've practiced different tactical stuff on the field, so that has helped a little bit. And, Steve, which is the GM of my club, is the first guy to tell me, like, stop fighting into this player and watch how she's moving. So it's great that they give me tactical breakdowns of my game with United City and with the national team. I think that feedback is great, but I think the biggest thing that they've given me just in general is having that opportunity to have open doors, because I think a lot of people just get overseen. And, I'm a girl from Fresno. Like, people, other than Lynn Williams, it's like, tell me one other women's athlete from Fresno. And Jenna Pardini, but like, she's an Olympian. But
Kelly Gazan.
Yeah, I love Kelly. Yeah, Kelly. Shout out to Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, giving you that opportunity, talking of the opportunity, women's soccer is it's one of the things that has been growing, and it's been growing rapidly. What do you think needs to happen? I mean, maybe you've touched a little bit on it, but what do you think needs to happen to continue this momentum and, to help the players, get seen, to also help champion what they're, the women's sports is doing worldwide, and if not Central America?
Yeah, I think it just needs to have the constant awareness of the sport. I think kind of like what United City is kind of doing, it's starting at a grassroots system. It's grassroots systems are like the elementary level, right? So for our club specifically, like, we're working on having that foundation set in stone so that people aren't missed and overseen. I think we don't get a lot of representation. Obviously, there's a whole balance of the men get more representation because they bring in more revenue, and that will always be the case for most of the time, which is great. Numbers are numbers, and financially, they're always going to have bigger dollar signs next to their name, which is fine. But I think we have to be able to give the women's side the opportunity to try and get that amount. Not saying they need that dollar amount, but scheduling games at a time where people and fans can actually go to them. It doesn't make sense if you're trying to grow the women's sport and the game's on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. It's like most of America is working 9-to-5 jobs. Like, we're not giving the women's sport a chance on the lower levels, NWSL games and, the European leagues. kind of can accommodate that. But, sometimes with our national team games, we play on a Thursday at 1 p.m. and people can't come and watch us. Like, you tell us that, you want to grow the sport, but then don't offer all the opportunities to help grow it. So I think, like, for, the Central South America teams, it's like, one, like, getting coaching staff that's going to help grow it, which it's getting there. It's getting more involvement. Like, now they have academies, which wasn't as big of a thing even in the US. Like, when I played, like, in Fresno, there was like 4 club teams total, and now it's hundreds of them. So I think it's just like the development of that and giving women that same opportunity to be seen is going to be monumental. And it's like, everyone knows most of the U.S. women national team players now. Like, they're recognizable household names, which I think is amazing to give that kind of opportunity to people. And it's being televised. Like, before, when it was the UWS or whatever, before it folded, no one could really watch it. Now with all these streaming services, it's like we have the opportunity to see all these teams play. It's not just, the EPL on the men's side. We can see, the women's game. We can see women's Chelsea and women's Arsenal and the Manchester United and whatever other leagues. I think it's having that exposure. It's definitely going to grow the sport.
And like, not to cut you off,
No.
but talking about, what is happening right now and getting that exposure, being seen, TVs now are showing it, everybody's watching it. Do you feel like, that the transfer window that Gima just got to go to play either Chelsea or one of those European clubs, do you think that's going to be taken up more?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a shift in the growth of the women's game. Like, and it has been. And I think, those $1 million signings are going to become a more normal thing. I think that there's going to be bigger investments in the women's program. So therefore, it's going to have more value and more fan base and more revenue that comes in. They're buying jerseys, they're buying tickets. And that's what's going to build them to get a more gender gap to even pay. I'm not saying it's going to be the same. Like, we're not going to get women's players making $200 million. That's going to take a very long time, but I think it's going to grow, and I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I guess what I meant to say, which I should have said, was looking at that now, what is happening now? You see that Naomi Girma got that chance. A lot more women are doing that. Is that like a testament towards what is happening for the women's soccer or women's sports? Like, they're getting more viewership. They're getting more opportunities to, get scouted like that. And also, you talked about Fresno being like 4 teams now, there's hundreds.
Yeah.
That's like a testament towards, the women's sports growing. I'm curious, as a player who's played in different levels, what is your take on the value of grassroots soccer in nurturing the future stars?
Yeah, I think the importance of grassroots soccer is going to be the continual development of the sport for us, especially on the women's side. I think the men's side is, they've had a huge head start, but the women's side is starting to develop into that side. And I think that's something in like the Central American and South American countries that they're doing too. I know for specifically my national team, they started like the equivalent of like a development academy, which is huge. Like, that was never a thing before. So now these girls are going to have these opportunities to develop so that, the next generations are going to be able to propel, the national team farther than it's ever been before. And that's the point of it, right? Like, every year we want to see growth. While I'm here, I'm going to do everything I can to help grow the sport and create awareness. And that's why, you and I are sitting down here too. It's creating a nurturing environment to help propel the sport. And I think that's super important that we continue to do.
I agree. And I guess, like, for the young players or the young girls who are dreaming of playing in, professionally or for the national team like yourself, what advice would you give them, especially, for coming back from, or how to be resilient? Like, for example, somebody like you that got an injury, you got back to your national team and stood up strong.
Yeah. I think in regards to injuries, I think everyone's journey, even without an injury, everyone's journey is individualized.
Right.
So what works for me might not work for Sarah or Justin or, Greg or, anybody. So I think it has to be a personalized journey for what you're wanting to move forward with and do, just in general, right? Like
Right.
my path is very different
Mm-hmm.
development than, we'll just say, even like Naomi Dermer. Like she had her path and I have my path, but we eventually hit those goals if you're kind of resilient to what you want to do. Backpedaling back from that, like the advice I would give them is to not be afraid to make mistakes. I think a lot of the time, especially with the youth now, there's a lot of pressure to play at a specific club. I need to impress my mom. I need to impress my dad. I need to impress the coach. I need to impress the scouts or whoever might be coming. And I think, we have to remember like why we're here and why we're playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes are inevitable. Like they happen to everybody. And I think we need to learn how to accept those mistakes. And I'm not saying to not make them. Obviously, we want to do the best that we can, but by, accepting that you're going to make mistakes, like move confidently in that choice. Like, shoot, that was a terrible ball. I'll make sure not to do that again. It's like decide what you're going to do and move confidently in whatever you're doing. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to lose the ball. It's okay to turn it over.
Mm-hmm.
But the non-negotiable with that is, the work ethic. It's like some days you're not going to be your best, but that should never change that you gave your best effort. Sometimes your max effort on a day, you're sick, you're throwing up, you ate something, whatever it might be, your max effort might be 80%. So the goal is like give that full 80% that you can. I think it's, for me and my life, no matter what I do, effort is like always non-negotiable. That's something that is got to be given, 10 out of 10 times.
I respect that, and I like that you give you 100% regardless of the situation or whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What advice, on top of that, like what advice would you give to young defenders, in terms of, how they can master the art of protecting, the goal while staying calm under pressure? It's a really tough thing to do.
Yeah.
You being a defender, I'm sure you have some tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah. Yeah. So my advice to young defenders looking to expand their game is to not only practice and train, is you got to watch football. Like pick a favorite player that you have and figure out what they're doing and how it works. If you're not in the starting lineup, don't take that as a failure. Like, again, failures cause strength, which cause growth, which cause you to be better. Like, remember that part. But look at what the guy or girl in front of you is doing and figure out how to do it too, right? Figure out what works for you, figure out what doesn't. A turn that I can do might not be the move that someone else can do. So figure out part of your game that works. And I think that's something that's really important is, it's the constant need for educating yourself. It's like constantly find ways to improve your game to make yourself better. And whether that's playing, sometimes it's pickup, right? Trying to develop that, that creative side where, there's no cost for your mistake at pickup. And that's why I love playing pickup, is because it's the freedom to play freely, back like when we were these kids' age, there's no pressure. Then when it goes into something more competitive, it's figuring out what part of the game is going to work and which ones don't. If you can't hit a long ball, you should practice that, right? It's like I mentioned before, like developing, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. You got to refine the craft. You don't get better by just being, man, I wish I was better. I spent hours playing wall ball, even at my level, just because it's like I want to be sharp on my touches. So it's like putting in those little extra efforts, studying the game, playing pickup, watching soccer, find someone that can help you. There's so many, I think with how much technology is now and how readily available everything is, like there should be no excuse of why you can't develop and be better, you know?
True. And so a lot of social media posts of people practicing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you up, but
No,
please
no,
continue. I just
no,
wanted.
that was good. Exactly. That's exactly the point. Yeah. It's, you know, the power of, it's not just, you know, I'm gonna call it us like when we were younger, it's like we just had YouTube, and YouTube was kind of like still growing. Now you have like influencers, you have social media, you have TikToks, you have still YouTube, you have Reddits for like, hey, like, has anyone done this? So there's so much opportunity. Yeah, Facebook. There's so much opportunity to develop yourself, even if you don't have somebody to help you. You know, like there's resources now that can help you grow.
It's true. There's not no limitation in terms of how you can get yourself better. You can use a coach, or you can do your own private sessions and do all the practice. You come to pick up games like this. Do you play 100%? Do you give your full force, or do you like it's a pickup game? I'm gonna just take it easy because I have a bigger game.
It depends. I think. Yeah, I think it really depends. I still want to say maybe I don't go 100% all in, just because it's like you don't want to risk getting injured for something silly, but it's definitely an area where when I'm playing with kids, like those are the days like you're just having fun with them. Like it's just kicking the ball around, no pressure, no rules, no regulations. It's just fun. Like it doesn't matter what you do. A 6-year-old is just there to be there. You know, they're just excited that you're on a field with them.
Yeah.
When I go and start playing against older people, I definitely get a little bit more competitive, but I still let that creative side, come and flow. And I try those skill moves that I want to be able to implement in a more serious game. But like I said, like it comes without the consequences of an actual game. Like, can I snake the ball around this guy and meg him and then go get the ball and do a one-time finish? Those are the freedoms of pickup that you can do. And like, okay, let me refine my craft. And I think you need to have those areas in your life where you don't feel bound by limitations. Because, if we're playing with our team, there's structures that you need to follow. And like, that's what, there's a coaching strategy and process and dynamics that you need to follow, while you still can create some of that freedom. But sometimes, you're down 1-0 in a game, is probably not the best opportunity to be trying a rainbow flick that you have never done before. It's like, let's not do that one there. So I think, the use of, and it doesn't even need to be like an organized pickup. Sometimes it's just like you and one friend just going around, or like that little kid just sweating. He's like, hey, like, can you come play 1v1 with me? Like those desires to do those things and help grow your ability and confidence to play, right? If you don't practice something, you're not going to get better at it. You can't just one day be, Messi. Messi spent hours of training to be able to move the way he does. Same thing with Ronaldo. He spent hours upon hours moving the way he does. The same thing.
I agree. I mean, it's just every time you talk about playing with freedom, it's your moment to exercise what you can do without limitations and try new things too. Talking of which, let's talk about some other fun stuff like your game day rituals. What do you have a pregame like meal, or is there anything that you do like a routine?
Yeah, I think it varies. So most of the time we have night games. So most of the day there's a big span. I usually eat the same thing every day, whether it's a game or not. So I am like a creature of habit and like routine. So no matter game day or not game day, I pretty much do the same thing every single time. So I usually have like Greek yogurt, start, pretty healthy. Lunch, for some reason, whenever it's a nighttime game day, I have a sandwich. I have no idea why, but for some reason it's like maybe it's superstitious. But for some reason, if it's a night game and I'm in California and it's for my club, I have a sandwich. And then usually before games, I don't really eat anything, just because for me, I know my body, it upsets my stomach, just not going to do any of that. And then pretty much like anyone else, it's like you have like put the left sock on first, right sock on, left boot on, right boot on. Yeah. So those little details is definitely a creature of habit, I think, is more than like a this is a superstitious, I have to do this. It's just like, this is what I've been doing for so long, and I just keep it that way. Yeah.
I'm imagining you putting your left shoe on first and then thinking, no, no, oh, I forgot. It should have been the right one.
Yeah.
Like it's gotta be do you do the same things like for example, like for your club team versus your national team, or do you just, it's a national team, I gotta maybe implement a little bit, bring my Guatemalan, magic.
The warrior side out. No, I do the exact same thing. Like, it's always, you get the kit on, and then we have obviously the warm up top, and then same sock. I always do the same sock, same way, same boots, same way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my socks low until we get ready to go out to the field. And then I always wear my socks high, like all above my knees. And like, if I don't wear them above my knees, it's like, this is a weird thing. So what am I doing here?
Yeah. I forgot.
Yeah, I would know. I would just have to look down and be like.
Do you feel like you'd mess up your game, like when if you forgot somehow, like would you mess up? Like...
No, I don't think so. I think, but it would give a reason if something did go wrong. I'd be like, it's because of the socks. It's 100% the socks' fault, not me, not user error.
Yeah, you'd have a better reason for why you guys lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would tell my national team coaches, because of the socks. I'm telling you.
Today was different.
Yeah, it was different. You gave me the youth socks. There was a problem. I'm just messing.
You talked about like it's never going to take you a day to become Messi, or I mean, you didn't mention Cristiano Ronaldo, but I'm curious, who's your favorite player, and what makes them your favorite player?
I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite player. There's a lot of players that I think influence the game a lot, like Messi, Ronaldo, and they will always be a debate on who's the greatest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, the Iniestas, the Busquets, there's tons of players that I think have made huge impacts and I love to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one person that stands out to me, if we're just going to go in my position, like a fullback, I think Marcelo is one of I think he's one of the greatest players in his position at the time he was in that position, because he was the first fullback you saw that had technical skill. Like, it wasn't just like brute force defense. Like, this guy was doing things that wingers were doing. And I think for me, that's one thing that'll be a notable, like, as a kid was watching this guy, I was like, what the heck? Like, this guy is doing skill moves that, only forwards do. And it kind of, showed where the modern game of soccer was going. And I think that was like, okay, like, keepers have to be good with their feet now. Like, it's just mandated.
Yeah.
Every player has to have, skill. And I think that was kind of cool thing I remember as a kid, like I mentioned, watching Marcelo just take off, and you're like, dude, how is this guy a fullback? So, like, that's definitely one of the players that I think is like maybe not my favorite, but like most memorable watching.
Yeah, I personally like Marcelo too. Like, I like the fact that he could run along the wings and attack, and also come back and defend. And I think it's inspired a lot of defenders. And talking of which, events like this, like the ones we have today, the pickup game, and in terms of growing your fans, in terms of connecting with people, what excites you about it?
Yeah, I think what excites me about events like this is a visible representation of the growth of the sport. It's cool to see these type of things being organized, because as a kid, I didn't have these it didn't exist. Not only did I not have the opportunity, it just wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to see the development of the sport, I think, is like crazy. Like, it's huge and it's inspiring. Like, even for me, like, seeing these little, like, what are they? 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds out there.
8-year-olds, yeah.
8-year-olds out there right now. It's like, oh my gosh, like, that is amazing. Like, the opportunities that they have and the growth that they'll have to play the sport is huge. And I think for me, I can only give back whatever I can from what I learned and know. And because I was limited in resources, I don't feel like it's something I should withhold from myself and be like, well, I had to learn, so you guys need to figure it out. It's like, no, we're open books. We should be helping grow the sport. And I think the biggest thing I can share with these kids is that, not everyone's journey is the same. And it is hard. Like, not everyone's going to be, a golden star that they're going to notice. And it takes a lot of hard work and dedication and practice. And when your time comes, it comes. You know, some people, it happens when you're 6 years old. Some people, it happens when they're 30. Like it's a range. And I think that's something I want to be able to, you know, share with the kids, that they don't have to be like, well, I didn't make this specific team, so I'm done. Like, I'm never going to make it pro. And it's like, you're only the things that you can control are yourself. So if you want to have the mentality that you're not good enough and not put in the work, then yeah, you know, those guys are probably right. You won't make it. But, you know, it's the diligence of believing in yourself and putting in the work ethic that can get you those opportunities. And like anything else, it's like there's not specific paths to follow. So it's just being aware of like what your path is and what your journey is, and sticking to that, because everyone's just so different and unique. And that's
true.
The beautiful part of it, right?
Yeah. Those are a lot of facts.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Being a role model to fans, especially young girls in soccer community, what is the most rewarding part of the grassroots soccer?
I think the most rewarding part is just being a part of it, like being able to be involved in a community that wants to see the growth. I think that is, not everyone has that kind of opportunity or is willing to put in the effort to go to these types of events. You know, I think some people forget where they come from and like forget how small things start, right? Everything is like a snowball effect. And I think it's really important that people constantly give back to where they came from. And granted, I'm not born and raised in Southern California, but I'd like to see the growth in, you know, all the youth players that are here. So if I can do any part, even if it's just showing up to an event, like that's definitely what I want to do.
What is your next big goal?
Yeah, so for 2025, I have very big goals. A few of them are signing a pro contract and playing overseas. The second one is obviously being called for the national team. Right now, unfortunately, we don't have a coach, so I'm really hoping, shout out, that someone's listening, that their federation gets a coach for us, just because we have qualifiers coming up at the end of the year. So I think that's really important. My other goal, also doubling down on the national team, is qualifying for the World Cup. I think that's something I want to help, you know, the team push to get to those situations. So that's kind of top 2-3 things. And then obviously with United City, we have a couple NWSL games coming up that we're playing against. So as of right now, February 6th, we play Utah Royals.
On Saturday?
I think it's on a Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on a Thursday in like a week and a half. So that's like a huge opportunity, not only for our club, but for myself. So those are like short-term goals and long-term goals that I'm shooting for.
We're rooting for you.
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
national
I
team
appreciate
at the United City FC.
Of course.
We want to see you guys out there. Lastly, what is the one message that you'd like to share with the young players? Some of them are behind you, women in soccer, and the broader Fieldtalk community.
Something I'd like to share with them is to make sure to enjoy every moment, right? The joy is not, yeah, we're going for an end goal, we want to win games, but a majority of the time we're in the process of it, right? So enjoy the process of the struggle, enjoy the process of the wins, enjoy the process of the losses, because that's where most of it is, where we live. You know, the successes are the 1%. I think Ronaldo said something similar. It's like, you know, the successes we have is this much of the journey, and the rest of the journey is this much. So it's like, make sure you learn to love those moments as well.
So we had some questions online from Instagram. Somebody asked, who is your favorite photographer of the year?
Yeah, it's Oscar with Shoot FC. He's been ride or die since day one, since I started, I think, at United City. So shout out to him. He's done great work for me, and I really appreciate everything he does.